Welcome back to the Christianity and Business Podcast, an initiative of the Archie W. Dunham College of Business at Houston Baptist University. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and this is the show that helps Christian business leaders to integrate biblical values into business. On this episode, we're joined by Becky Turner. Becky is the National Managing Partner for the Barnabas Group, which provides opportunities to support Christian nonprofit organizations with their God-given expertise and skill sets. She's also the president and founder of KBT Consulting and serves women in life coaching and nonprofits in strategic planning and development. Becky, welcome to the show.
Hey, Darren, glad to be here. Thanks so much.
So this is a topic we haven't covered on the show. Tell us, why was the Barnabas Group founded?
The Barnabas Group was founded in 1999 by two great guys, Jim West and Bob Shank, and it came about through an organization called the Master's Program. And the Master's Program is a 3-year program where marketplace leaders are taken through a process to determine clarity, margin, and balance. Because most people, men and women, get about halfway in their lives, especially those that are hard drivers, type A's. They get to 35, 40 years old and they're like, I'm successful, now what? And so the Master's Program helps the men and the women go from success to significance. Well, this guys got out in 1999, the first class, and they're like, okay, we're ready. What do we do now? And they said, well, Bob and Jim said, let's just vet some ministries, parachurch ministries that might have some business needs and see if we can come alongside and help them. And so in 1999, a group of 12 guys sat around a table in Orange County, California, and said, here's a few ministries. Do you know anybody that can help them in these key areas? And that's how we started in 1999.
And you were one of the first members at one of those roundtables. How did you come to the table?
Yeah. And I actually came kind of through the back door. In 2007, 2008, the Orange County chapter, as the Master's Program went to other locations, they have the same problem. So Barnabas Group started following the Master's Program to other locations, and they opened the chapter in 2008 in Houston. And believe it or not, I was actually one of the very first presenting ministries. I was the executive director for a maternity home, Lifehouse, which is located in South Houston. And I presented in November of that year. And then through a series of things, they contacted me the following summer and said, Becky, hey, would you be willing to come help us build Barnabas in Houston? So that's how I got to be a part of it, in the Barnabas Houston. And we took that and opened up 2 more locations, so 3 locations there. At the same time, about 2 years into it, Dallas called and said, hey, can we launch a chapter in Dallas? And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's figure out how to do that. So we launched the one in Dallas to follow up the Master's Program there. And then 4 years ago, Bob Shank came to me and said, hey, Beck, would you be interested to be the National Managing Partner? So I have been a part of Barnabas since really 2009, I guess, is when the first time I engaged. And it's been a real blessing, and I love being a part of it. So I get the privilege to travel around the nation pre-COVID and meet with a lot of great people and talk about Barnabas. Now I just do it, from my living room. So
yeah. And so there are organizations like the National Christian Foundation and other foundations that help to kind of present opportunities for giving, financial giving. Is it safe to say that Barnabas Group is kind of like a foundation for volunteerism in a sense?
Exactly. And the National Christian Foundation is a great partner organization of ours, because many of the people that come there have gotten to the point in their life where they have high capacity, both in time and finances and talent, because they probably didn't get the finances if it wasn't for a good skill level, talent. And so National Christian Foundation says, how is the best way to invest your money, both, long-term as well as in the ministries that you want to support. But then, so we come along and say, how to use those talents, the things that actually the world has probably made you an expert in. They've taught you, and, whether it's Exxon or, any other corporation has actually paid for you to get better at accounting and finance and marketing and leadership and strategic planning and all those things. And now, how do you take those talents and make it help ministries advance the gospel. And so we help that partnership that connects between that parachurch ministry that has the specific business need and the local marketplace leader.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about on, for example, Facebook on Giving Tuesday, there like countless fundraising drives to raise money for these nonprofits. It seems like there are nonprofits with needs everywhere we look. Why should people go through the Barnabas Group to find out about even more needs? What is the real value add there?
Well, the real value add is for that marketplace leader. I believe, and I'm not a theologian, so there's probably a whole lot of other people at HBU that could speak into this, but I believe we're going to be held accountable for everything the Lord gave us. Our time, our talent, our sphere of influence, as well as our finances. And oftentimes we think, well, it's just our finances, be a good steward. When we think that, we think money. But man, I need to be a good steward of every talent, favor, opportunity God has given me. And so the value add to the marketplace leader is that I can then take these very things and I can help this ministry advance the gospel even faster. A perfect example, and I think I've never seen it so evident in talking about the yoke is easy and the burden is light, is when I sit down with an executive director and across from me is that executive director and a CFO for a corporation and that executive director for a homeless ministry. He's looking at financial statements that he gets from his bookkeeper and his CPA, and he has no idea what any of the numbers mean. And it doesn't matter. He's like, oh, it's red. So that must be, these are Jesus's words. So it must be right? It must be good if it's in red, right? No, I mean, the red is not good. And so here, meanwhile, I got a CFO who looks at multi-million-dollar P&Ls and multi-sheets, and he understands it. I take those two guys to lunch. And the executive director is like, hey, will you relieve this burden from me by telling me what these numbers are? And the CFO said, this is easy. Look at these two numbers every month. And if they're below this, then call me. The burden is easy. The yoke is easy and the burden is light because we've shared that. And it's taken something off the executive director that he can now go do ministry. And that marketplace leader can continue to do marketplace leader stuff, but his talent is being used to, it's being exploited with the ministry. So that's kind of how it works and why it's a value that you're mindful of those very things.
Right. But if I look on all of those fundraising drives that are coming at me on Facebook on Giving Tuesday, couldn't I just reach out and say, hey, how about I use my skill sets? But the Barnabas Group is vetting to make sure that this is a legit nonprofit, which is easier said than done, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course you can do that. But it's the same thing, I can mow my lawn, but my per hour cost of, doing other things is much higher return than me paying somebody $140 a month to mow my lawn. And so it just is for efficiency purposes. Let's take advantage of the leverage that we can bring as an organization to vet multiple ministries across the nation, bring them, showcase them, have gone through and said their finances are solid or they know they're not solid. And so they need a CPA to come alongside and help them. They are Christ-centered. What they're doing is advancing the gospel either as evangelism or discipleship. And number 3, they have a need that money really can't solve. And I think that's always the big thing because we spend a lot of time pre-presentation, pre-meeting, pre-showcasing to dig deep into that executive director's mindset and their ministry to find out what's the problem. Because most ministries think if I had more money, I could solve my problems. And that, I think in the government, we think that, right? If we throw enough money at something, it's going to fix the problem. We know that's wrong. We have to throw enough money at the right problems and at the right solution to fix those problems. And so Barnabas comes alongside and does all that work. So when you show up for a 2-hour breakfast in Houston or a 5-hour, event in the Bay Area. It just depends on each chapter does it differently. You show up, there's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 ministries that I know are good, solid, and I can say thumbs up, thumbs down. I can say I can help. I know somebody, and then I can go about doing my thing, and it's worth them, the membership investment to make that happen.
Yeah. Are you starting to get some stories now in the middle of this COVID pandemic. I mean, obviously nonprofits are getting hit as hard or harder than most organizations. Um, are there any kind of positive stories of how these business people are helping the nonprofits stay afloat in the middle of all this?
Yeah, I think part of it, we actually did this. Different chapters did different things. Our chapter in the the Sacramento area did. I mean, they called it a COVID emergency ideation session, and so I think it was 6 different ministries over about a 4-week period that spent about 3 hours on the phone on a Zoom with 5 to 8 business leaders saying, how do I respond to COVID? Both organizationally, how do I respond? Do I fire everybody and they go get unemployment because they'll make more money on unemployment than they do working for me? Do I do PPE? Do I cut half my staff? How do I continue doing so? Just HR kind of related questions on that. Some of them came on and asked, how do this one organization works specifically in the Southeast Asia. How do I continue to minister over there? And what are some things that I can do? And they could strategize. And that was one of the key things that came up. They came out of it of how you can systematically go about continue doing your training, and they helped them figure that out. And some of it was like, we do this in business all the time, like Zoom. To a lot of people, and even a lot of ministries, they couldn't even spell Zoom before March 15th. But now we're all experts on Zoom. And how do we use that, either a free base or others that we can continue to use that technology? So those were things that just immediately we could come along because we were already established, already had a group of marketplace leaders that already had trusted us, and they reached out and really made a difference in those organizations.
Yeah. And what level of commitment of time are you looking for from these members?
Yeah. So it's really, as you desire. It's totally up to their choice of what it is. If I have one partner that I can think of up in the Woodlands, I don't know if Dave, he was involved in some ideation sessions, but for the most part, he comes to the meetings. But the man is like a walking Rolodex. And whenever a situation came up, he's like, oh, I know somebody who can help with that. And sometimes they're believers, sometimes they're not believers. But they were people that were in that industry that had a specific need that this ministry was looking for. And Dave would send an email 9 times out of 10, sitting there at the meeting, pull out his phone, send an email, connect the executive director to that other person that can help with that need. And we have seen arenas being built, at a sex trafficking home, recovery home. I saw clear. One place was a concrete. I can't remember what the story was on that, but I know it was a concrete guy that he helped him solve with the concrete guy. And then another one was in marketing and just said, hey, I need some help with social media. And the guy came and said, hey, connect these two. So for Dave, it's just coming and having breakfast at the Woodlands once a quarter for a couple of hours. Meanwhile, I have other ones that I know that they've gotten on a plane and flown to Romania to spend 2 weeks in an orphanage to hear about what they're doing there and plugging in and giving their time and their talent to help build that orphanage to the next point. And some of it is money. I have one story that is maybe for another time, but someone was going to make, I think, a $20,000 gift and ended up making like a $200,000 gift, but it changed her life for good. And it was wonderful. So your level of investment is completely up to what your engagement is. And then there are times that people hear a situation, they go get plugged into that organization, help them with that situation. And then they're like with these people forever. They're like, this is my ministry. I'm going to dedicate the next 5 years of my life helping them on the board, helping them strategically, helping them fundraising, whatever the situation might be. And they walk away from Barnabas. And I feel like we haven't lost a partner. We've done our job, because my heart as a national managing partner is when we get to glory, there's no marketplace leader that's going to stand before the Lord and say, I didn't know how to use my talents, because I can say, well, we were here. And I want to make sure everybody knows that we're doing that so they can actually use their talents for great glory for God and for their own good. And in many ways, it's so much more than money. That's what I think, because it's using what you're passionate about I mean, if you've done a career in it for 20 or 30 years, most of the time you're passionate about that industry. You like it, you've got a good experience, it's easy for you to do. Meanwhile, you come alongside that executive director who they don't need to know how to, figure out how to do an HR policy manual. You come along, help them do that. And wow, what a difference that can make for the kingdom in that area.
Yeah. So how do you exhort these Christian business professionals to serve these nonprofits without downplaying the potential eternal value of the work they do in the for-profit business world? Because that's a tension that I find from listening to my pastor talk about the need to volunteer. It's almost as if the work you do in your 9-to-5 job doesn't really have, because a lot of companies are doing a lot of great work just right there, like the CEOs are doing a lot of great work right there to care for their own employees.
Absolutely.
So how do you talk about that in a way that's not sort of a mutually exclusive sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. And how we usually address it is we believe one of the greatest lies in the late 20th century into the 21st century is that there's a secular sacred divide, that there's a division between what we do Monday through Friday, or even a stay-at-home mom, that is not a sacred work. But it's all a sacred work if your heart, it all goes back to your heart and your motivation. Sweeping floors is a sacred work if you're doing it for the glory of God. I mean, Brother Lawrence washing dishes in the monastery, that was a sacred work that was done because the presence of God was there, because we were there and we were acknowledging the presence of God. So that's usually where we come from, of saying, look, what you do Monday through Friday is not any more important than the pastor preaching on Sunday morning. If your heart is toward God and your motivation is to bring him glory and you good in the midst of all that. And so we're just saying, let's take those very same talents that usually Monday through Friday and exploit them for the kingdom. And that's what we want to do. So I think that's how it's not a divide. It's not a separation. It's all sacred if our heart's right. And here's the other thing too, our religious works, if our heart's not right, they ain't sacred. That's worthless, right? And so it's all about the motivation of our hearts. And so when we look at that, and I think that makes it really easy it's easier sometimes to say there's this divide. So if I'm doing secular work, I can act like a secular person. But if all my work is sacred, if all that I say, I do, and I respond and I act is sacred, then I need to be set apart and sanctified in that process and make sure I act like someone who's sacred. And I think that brings about the change. So, because yes, you're hitting a real problem, a true problem, that is like, if you love Jesus, you'd quit your day job and come work. And as a former ministry leader, don't quit your day job. We still need your checks. Yeah. We still need you to send money. But man, you can come alongside and together do that. So I think that's a whole nother message and a whole nother topic you could do, talking about the sacred secular divide that is really, I think, alive from the pit of hell personally.
Yeah. And that actually comes up on pretty much, we're coming up on 100 episodes now, and that comes up on pretty much every episode in some form or fashion. And I actually teach the new members class I'm one of the new members class teachers in my church. And so what's a big part of the new members class? It's to help get people plugged into volunteer roles, right? And so I always try to be very careful about the language that I use to not somehow imply that what you do it's like, come and volunteer and be a greeter in the church, and then you're a doorkeeper in the kingdom of heaven, and you're really, this is the work that really matters. Like, don't just go make money for selfish reasons, to keep your lights on. And that's all just kind of vain, but you need to come in and volunteer in your church, because that's what really makes the difference. And I'm just very careful to not send that signal. But the way I typically encourage them to think about it is, it's kind of like the tithe principle. I think I think 10% of our income does go to the Lord. As far as, does that go to your local church? I mean, I think it goes to where you're being discipled. And I think, certainly a percentage of that goes toward the poor and so on. But also with your time, I think there's a need to volunteer some of that time toward things that you're not getting paid for, because then that helps to kind of reorient the work you do in your 9 to 5 job. Like I'm sure that if you were to do a study of all of the members and the time that they put into using, whether it's their accounting skills or whatever it is, toward that women's shelter or whatever it is, and then they go back in their job and do accounting, they have a fresh purpose for what they're doing.
Right. No, absolutely. And it helps them understand that what they're doing and what they've learned in their education, and they know they can turn around and use it for the kingdom as well. And that it's like, okay, I want to be the best I can be in this secular job, in this work 9 to 5 job that I am. I'm going to be the best because I know that next, the third Thursday of every month, I'm serving on that board and they need me to be spot on when I talk about marketing. Or I know we're going to have a strategy session, with that committee that's coming up, or I'm going to be in sales and I want to learn the best sales, I can, because I can help a fundraiser know how to develop relationships with prospective donors. I mean, all of those things drives the motivation of why I want to do things in excellence, because ultimately I want to disciple somebody else in these things that are going to advance the kingdom.
Yeah. And those of us who tithe, we're expecting God's blessing on all of our finances, not just on, that 10%, but I think the same applies with our time. How much we want a blessing on all of our time. And I think without volunteering a percentage of that toward these other ministries, especially now, are in such great need. And there's such great opportunity and impact to be made.
Yeah,
I was just
Dr. Bruce Wilkinson. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just interviewed one of our board members for CCB, and he was just telling me off the record about just this opportunity that he was super excited about, to be able to participate in the genocides that have happened around the world. One of the big problems is that the families, they don't know what happened to their loved ones, right? And they just know that they're not here anymore. And so there's this organization that he's helped to support that was able to help bring some closure for some of these families. And of course, that costs a lot of money to do. And so he was just so lit up about that opportunity to be able to participate in that endeavor. What were you about to say? I'm sorry.
No, I think because it gets into that, you were talking about the tithing and the time and, and expanding it. I remember Dr. Bruce Wilkinson said something about, I just have so much on my plate. I mean, I think I was whining to him about having so much on my plate. How can I add more to my plate? And he said, pray that Lord would expand your plate. And I think that's really what happens is when whether our time or whether our talent or whether our finances, when we give to the Lord, he just expands it. And my joke is always, I am absolutely 100%. I'm a prosperity preacher. I give because I know I'm going to get. Now, I don't get back 1-to-1. And often I don't want back 1-to-1. I want more than what he could give us in that. And so I believe he's so faithful to that, especially. And there's an amazing proverb that says, if you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord. And I'm just like, how in the world can that possibly be that me, the one who gave us everything, saved my scrawny neck, and by the way, I get heaven along the way, and I can actually do something for the poor, and the Lord's going to hold that as a debt to me? Whoa. How can that be?
It's incredible.
Yeah. So let me go serve. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know our listeners are chomping at the bit to find out how they can get connected. So why don't you tell them?
Yeah. The best way is to just go out online, barnabasgroup.org, and it is Barnabas Group. That's where everybody gets confused. It's not Barnabas. So it's BARNABASGROUP.org. So barnabasgroup.org. go there. All the information is going to be on that main homepage. And in the upper right, you can click on local chapter, and you can click on there, go to the Houston location, and you'll see all the meetings that we have. We have about a dozen a year in the greater Houston area between the Woodlands, Katy, and at the Junior League in Houston. You can check those out, or other cities if you're traveling, and see what those are. Register for that, and you can reach out to the local managing partner and be a part of it to learn more. But that's always the best way. Website, barnabasgroup.org is the best place to go to learn more about what we're up to.
Yeah. Well, Becky, I think a good way to wrap it up would be, because I don't think we heard I know who Barnabas from the Bible is, and I have a good sense of, how his name got into the name of the organization. But as a call to action for our listeners, why don't you kind of share who Barnabas was and what that example means for us?
Absolutely. The reason why it's called the Barnabas Group, originally it was just because he's a son of encouragement, and our heart was we just wanted to encourage the ministries. But as we study deeper into Acts, we realize that the first time you see Barnabas, he's just a classic marketplace leader, right? He sells a piece of property, he writes a check, and he gives it to somebody else to do the ministry. And nothing wrong with that. And many of us, me included, as a marketplace leader, that's where I was. I just did my work. I wrote a check and I said, somebody else do the real ministry. And that's where most Barnabas partners, they come in at that point. The next time you see Barnabas he is actually using his sphere of influence. He's met Paul. He trusts Paul. He knows Paul is a true convert to the faith and is no longer persecuting Christians, but actually a Christ follower himself. And he's trying to get into the apostles to talk to these guys to just begin to work together. Well, they're scared of him. So Barnabas, though, just with a simple, it'd be an email today or a text, but just says, look, you can trust Paul because you trust me, right? Trust Paul. So he uses his sphere of influence to connect Paul to the apostles, which then as a Gentile, I'm really thankful that Paul went out and did that. And so we see first he writes a check. Second, he uses the sphere of influence. The next time you see him, he's actually now using his time. He's starting to get his hands dirty, so to speak, in the ministry. And he's going with Paul on various mission trips. And so he's actually using his time and getting plugged in. On one of those last trips where they were together, we all know the story for most of us do, that there was a little bit of a conflict between John Mark and Paul. And Barnabas was saying, hey, we got to forgive John Mark. And Paul's like, forget it, leave the guy behind, I'm heading on. And so Barnabas and Paul separated. Here's the interesting thing is if we fast forward to the end of one of his letters in the epistles, Paul says, send me John Mark. So we know somewhere along the line, there was reconciliation between John Mark and Paul. And this is Becky's stretch on this. We know Paul has zero conflict resolution skills. So I'm believing Barnabas had great conflict resolution skills, and he was able to use those very skills to keep the relationship with John Mark and Paul so they could reconcile later down the road. So Barnabas uses all four of the spheres that we talk about in the Barnabas Group. And that's what we want all of our partners to be that way, to get involved, give their time, give their talents, give their influence, and give their money to advance the gospel. So as I say, we can expedite the return of Christ's coming.
Yeah, beautiful. Be a Barnabas, everybody. Becky,
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Darren, thanks. Glad to be here.
BarnabasGroup.org is the website. We sure appreciate your time and sharing your passion, your organization with us today, Becky.
My pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if so, we would greatly appreciate it if you would leave us a quick rating and review for the Christianity in Business podcast on iTunes. You can get more information about HBU Center for Christianity in Business at christianityinbusiness.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep integrating biblical values into your business.